Heyo, duckies and dice fiends. Welcome in. It is Tuesday, and that means it is time for the Table Talk Show. I am one of your hosts, Kay, and David's over here, I think. Is that correct? Yes. Heyo. David, who the heck is you, and what the heck is we doing here?
I had ice cream for breakfast, and welcome to the Chaotic Wholesome Table Talk Show Tuesday, where every week we talk about TTRPG stuff, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to be a better human being, all with focus on intersectionality and inclusivity so that everybody can have a good time.
And as always, you can find David and I here on Tuesdays playing Baldur's Gate 3, though that might not last too much longer because we are fast approaching the end of this game. Friday, David may or may not be streaming, but I will be over on the Entropy Emporium playing the Weird Wilds War, where I'm Brandon, the Himbo Ranger. And then Saturday, join us for Unlikely Heroes. It is a 4-shot 5e campaign, very Lord of the Rings inspired, run by the incredible Adam So Wizard. Y'all, you will not believe this group that we're playing. All the characters are ridiculous, and I'm not telling you anything about it because the introduction is going to be amazing. But you are not here today to hear about us. We are here with the incredible Jenn. Jenn, tell us, who the heck is you? And what the heck does you do to bring you here?
I is Jenn Sutcliffe, and I am here to talk about tabletop games, obviously, but in respect to the sort of academic side, the learning side of TTRPGs. So I am a learning designer, so I design learning experiences, courses, things like that. And I'm also a PhD student at Michigan State University in educational psychology and educational technology. And I research games and learning. And my research right now is focusing on tabletop games, which is also a hobby of mine. So very pleased to be a guest on here.
We are so excited to have you. We've had a couple educators come on. So it's always a treat for me to talk to like academics or teachers and like how are they incorporating TTRPGs, because as some of y'all know who hang out, I am a late in life TTRPGer. I didn't actually get to play TTRPGs until shortly before the pandemic. And like as soon as I started playing it, I was like, this would have changed my life. Had I had the freedom to do this like in high school and middle school when I was figuring a bunch of stuff out, like having the freedom to make a bad choice and it not ruin my entire life, to like try out some of these things and have consequences, but not life-ending consequences, would have been great. Hey, Laria, welcome on in. So yes, we are delighted to have you. And before we dive into all of, because we do want to talk about all of that, but we want to make sure that we take a second to focus on your personal project that is almost out.
Oh, right. Oh, we're gonna lead with that.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, we are.
amazing.
Yeah.
We are.
Okay, so yeah, I do a bit of TTRPG writing myself, and so as it goes, creative work can take a while, and so this project has been about 3 years or so in the making. And I'm hoping to release this book in at least playtest form by the end of the year, but it is called Campaign Cartomancy for Savage Worlds, so specifically designed for Savage Worlds. And it takes the idea of, in Savage Worlds, if you're not familiar, it does use dice, but also cards for player actions for different outcomes and scenarios. So standard card deck. And so cartomancy is card reading, so like tarot, but originally it started with a deck of cards. So it essentially created a system for if you are playing Savage Worlds and you draw a certain card, you look at that card and what it represents, sort of the lore.
Keep talking. I have to step
meaning.
away 1 second.
Yep. Behind that, and use that as inspiration for storytelling in the game. So, and that's sort of a thing where it can be, you can use it or not, but it's a built-in tool that you can use for moments where you're like, I need some inspiration for how I'm going to tell this story or for what happens next. And I've also included in it different spreads for character creation, for essentially creating character backstories and integrating all of the player characters together, how they met, what they went through together before the current adventure started. Tools for DMs to draw cards and build out a story arc. So all that stuff is part of this collection of card meanings and ways to sort of use them in storytelling and creating narrative and just making adding some richness to the world building. So
last PAX I was on a panel with my good friend Cake Tease, who you sometimes see around the channel, and we did TTRPGs, tarot cards and TTRPGs was actually the entire panel. And she talked about she likes to play true neutral characters, but it's very difficult to be truly neutral, right?
yeah.
And one of the ways she gets around that is she's also a tarot card reader, and so she'll be in a moment and be like, what will my character do? And she'll just flip a tarot card and be like, oh well, the fool, I'm gonna go on impulse, I'm gonna do the fun thing, I'm gonna do the story arc thing. Whereas if it's the hermit, well then I'm gonna hold back and I'm gonna be a little bit more thoughtful about this. So That's
I
really
love
cool.
that.
I love finding
Yeah.
different ways to incorporate decks and tools and character building and ways to bring characters together, because all of that is
Yeah.
just what
And
makes TTRPG so
sometimes,
fun.
you just like everything in, well, most things in a game are spontaneous and unpredictable. So you don't always have something ready, to say about what your character's doing or why or how they would respond to something. So this was kind of my, just it's sort of inspired by writers like Stephen King who have used tarot to come, sort of, even if you don't end up using that as, what's in your story, just getting the ideas flowing. I feel like that's really like what things like tarot, cartomancy, and like divination are
Yeah, Kay
amazing
has
for.
a deck or
No,
two.
Very nice
I
collection.
don't have a problem.
I love
This is
that.
just what
I
I
have
could
way
grab with
too
two
many
hands.
tarot decks
It's a problem.
for
It's
one
a problem.
person.
I
They're
may
all
or may
just
not.
different.
So
and
you have
great
just
in their
enough.
own
Got
way.
it. I don't know. It really feels
Exactly.
like you're missing one.
Yeah, you might need one more.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, maybe soon, actually.
I had a moment of joy because I have a lot of characters who read tarot like in character.
Mhm.
And I had a moment of joy because I'm like, oh, these two characters can both share this deck. This is great. I'm not going to be tempted to buy another deck for this character because this other deck is already perfect for them. Good. May and Soul can share. They're not at all the same, but they can
You
share.
can save that new deck purchase for something
Exactly.
else.
For more dice, because that's totally
Right.
And a thing that Kay does, we're working on a custom setting for a game, and Kay and I spent a lot of time, not just building the worlds, but building the storylines that are happening in the game. And we're doing a play test, and so what'll happen is Kay will pull a card at the start of the session. I know exceedingly little about tarot, so Kay will show the card, and I'll be like, "Ha, that looks like a card." And then after the session is over, I'm like, "So you pulled, the Eight of Cups. What precisely does that mean?" And it always, 100% of the time, reflects on what happened over the course of the session, even without me knowing anything about like what tarot is. And I always find that really, really, really fascinating.
That's
my
amazing.
my GM before I play a Starfinder game called Emergency Bar Podcast, and before every session, I pull a card to predict what's going to happen that session, and a couple of us know it really well, and a couple people don't know tarot at all, including Adam, the GM, is learning tarot now. But before, I'd be like, "Oh," and he'd be like, "What does that mean?" And I'd say, "Oh, well, this means a and he'd be like, and has threatened to ban my decks more than once. Got to be very clear that I'm saying decks, like decks of cards. Rex wants to know, do you have an odd or even number of tarot decks? Either way, that's an unlucky, and you need to get another one.
Completely agree.
And
I have no idea, so time to buy another tarot deck, I think.
I have 2 Taroka decks, Rex, and yes, it's a problem. Welcome on Rix. Welcome Kryzakon. Welcome Lurking Rider. We're so glad y'all are here. Even outside that deck is still accurate, right? Like, yeah, it's. I'm sad. Candace has a recording tonight, and I'm very sad because I know they would be so excited for this because, as we were discussing in the green room, Candace is one of our favorite people, one of our favorite players, one of our favorite GMs, just an incredible human being. And they cut their teeth on Savage Worlds and are always like, more people need to play Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds is so great. And I'm like, you're not wrong. Let's do it. But of course, a lot of people want to play D&D or Rules Light. It seems to be like, it's like either D&D or let's go super Rules Light. But you are doing some studies and some learning and some research around not D&D, but Savage Worlds. So talk to us a little bit about that and tell us, like, why Savage Worlds?
Let's see, where should I begin with this story? So, well, I started playing D&D. Actually, like you, didn't start till later in life. I'm 40 and I didn't start till I was 30. So essentially uh when 5e came out is when I started playing. And I was already working in academia as an academic librarian. And so the sort of my origin story with tabletop role playing games actually just already includes my academic professional life as well. But I had a bunch of new colleagues come in because, we were like, I was at a university or merging with another university. And so it's a team building thing. Some of us had the idea to play D&D together. And that ended up being like a 2 or 3 year campaign. My first like real like character that I got attached to that was in this campaign. We did like a short one before, but then I changed from being a druid to a rogue, which is the best class.
Yes.
In my
Rogues
opinion.
are near and dear to my heart.
Yes, I was a halfling rogue named Stabitha. And still one of my favorite characters. I think we ended up calling our party Stabitha and the amateur strategist, because Stabitha would just kind of by default be the leader and like go out and just do something, like whether it was a good idea or not necessarily sometimes, but somehow end up being the default leader of that group. But that's how I got started playing tabletop games in general, and then I started playing Savage Worlds in like 2017, I think. And that sort of I think I had like played a couple other systems, just here and there, one shot. Like I know I did a cyberpunk game. We would do like a one-shot Halloween game and like try a different system. But Savage Worlds I really loved because it's very the mechanics, the way they are designed, their tagline is fast, furious, fun, and so it's meant to feel very like cinematic and empowering to characters. Like your characters are wild cards. It's something that and you can do like other people in that world just like couldn't do because they're not special like you. And there's a lot of things about Savage Worlds that just sort of give a little bit more opportunity for things to happen. I rarely feel like when I'm playing Savage Worlds that like I just took my turn and I wasn't able to contribute very much because I just rolled badly. They have a system of rewards called bennies. So a benny will allow you to re-roll a benny, and you can earn bennies throughout the game. You start with a default number, but for each session, but then you can get bennies for playing true to your character, for just good role play in general, or sometimes you get bennies just for telling a good joke, whatever the GM decides deserves a benny, and you can use those for re-rolling, but then different purposes too. So like just change something maybe minor, but that'll help out the party, in the story, change how something happened, regain your power points, which are like spell slots. And I've been DMing a game for my friends for almost 3 years. Actually, on this week is our third year D&D anniversary, and these are like friends from high school, know each other forever, and we used to write fan fiction together, and now we're adults writing fan fiction together.
Right.
Essentially.
I
And
feel like there's an age group where the transition, like there's like a one-way path, like a direct line from like the message board fan fiction kind of
Yep.
collaborative writing directly into TTRPG. But it's a
Yep.
certain age demographic because that kind of collaborative writing only existed for a small window when like
Right.
live journal was the thing.
Oh, live journal. Oh yeah. That's a whole other episode.
Right.
I used to
Digging
love
up the
live
past
journal.
over here.
Oh yeah, I miss live journal. There's just some things that they need to come back. You know, I do feel like blogging's making a comeback. You know, with the
Medium.
essential demise of Twitter. I think some people are turning to blogs
That
again.
slow death spiral.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so as I sort of got so I was gonna say, in my game that I'm DMing, I actually use bennies in that game. And that has been great for the players, but also challenge for me sometimes, because like I wanted to add that just because of like the empowerment factor, and I just think it makes it more fun. I mean, Savage Worlds people have fun. I was at Gamehole Con last year, and there's a whole Savage Worlds room of where all the Savage Worlds games were, and people were saying those people are the loudest people at this convention. But it's just because like exciting things happen in Savage Worlds. People like stand up from their chair and like, you know, cheer, and you know, it's just very good times. But I still love D&D. And I tried to run a very fun and empowering D&D game with good storytelling. And their characters, I think there was like some Reddit thread about like worst D&D characters ever, and my friends wanted to take that concept and, you know, essentially be terrible D&D characters. So for example, we have a tiefling, or a hat that used to be a tiefling. But
this sounds like some Paradox Perfect stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like ridiculous stuff. A were cat that doesn't believe in the moon. The hat is also fire resistant, of course. And yeah, it doesn't believe in the moon, and not only that, but like actively like hands out pamphlets about how the moon is a lie and things like that. So yeah,
That's
just
D&D, yeah.
ridiculous characters, and I don't think that they anticipating playing those characters for 3 years, but that's somehow we got there.
That's this Unlikely Heroes game that I just
Yeah.
said. Like literally the GM was like, I want you, like Adam's pitch was like, I want you to like come in and play like a hero, but it's like a gelatinous cube, right? Like what is the weirdest thing you could play? And I was kind of like, okay, well let's try it out. And we did a session 0, you know, little test to see. And I'm like, oh, I want to play this party forever because they're ridiculous, and yet we work together, and it's going to be so much fun. And so when you could just do that, it's so delightful.
Yeah. Although, as the DM, I'm glad that just recently the party got trapped in the donjon. I don't know if you're familiar. Well, you know, like deck of many things. Of course, they pulled the donjon. I just decided to throw the deck of many things in there. Oh yeah, there she is. And of course they pulled the donjon, so that became its own like 6 or 7 session thing to escape out of there. And I had to tie it in with Strahd somehow. We're running Curse of Strahd. And
it's Strahd's donjon.
Because there you go, yeah, pretty much. That's what it amounts to. And because the tiefling, who's just called Nat, which is short for not a hat, was brought to a different dimension. In the donjon, he was actually in tiefling form. And then between myself and the player, we talked about it, and he was kind of ready to just be a tiefling again. And I was like, oh, thank God I don't have to like think about how does healing work for a hat anymore. Okay.
Can they
Does
just
mending
cast?
heal?
Yeah, I was just about to say. I was like, can they cast mending?
It's essentially mending, but then I kind of had to like sort of scale that for the different types of healing, that a humanoid character would use. So, I mean, in some ways, that was figuring those sorts of things out was incredibly fun.
Yeah.
But
3 years in.
Yes, 3 years in, I don't blame him. It's like, yeah, let's just break him free of the curse. Planar travel does weird stuff to you, so
we need DC Lucere to be here because DC Lucere is a hatamancer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh. So
at least does
sort of like the Fantasia with the brooms, but with hats.
Rex says you could say he no longer felt
oh
the character.
My God.
That you could say that.
I warned you. We have the best chat.
Very accurate. Yeah. I love that. So that's like my background in, games, tabletop games as a form of entertainment. And then sort of parallel to that in my career trajectory from academic librarian to learning designer to educational researcher, I sort of explored just, I think I was working in libraries and started playing D&D in the library where I worked. Just sort of thought about like how might you use games in libraries to make it more interesting, engaging, motivating for students when like we would teach them how to do research in the library, for example. And so just sort of starting to read about that. And at this time, this is like 2015, 2016, there was not a lot of research on tabletop games and learning. Now there's a ton. Like there still can be a lot more, but there's quite a lot on, both games like D&D that are, were designed for entertainment, but you can use in an educational setting, but also tabletop role-playing games that are customized for and designed for specific learning purposes, like training and simulations and things like that. There's a lot more research now, and that is very exciting. But there's still a lot to explore there. And one thing there's not a lot of research about yet is actual plays, which is still a fairly new medium. I think there have been people streaming games for like at least a decade or more, but it's really blown up but the past 5 years. I don't have data on this trend, but and for me, it's funny that I chose to study actual plays because I actually like totally didn't get them at first. Like I didn't really understand like why would I want to watch other people playing that's for 4 hours sometimes. I love the 1 to 2 hour actual play. I will say that is like my sweet spot for attention span. As being like an observer, not participant of a tabletop game. I definitely have to titrate my watching of like Critical Role, a little bit at a time. But when I started DMing, they became more relevant to me because you've got a lot of responsibility as the facilitator of the game, and I wanted to give my players a good experience. So I wanted to know more about not just how people, what the rules of D&D are, because like 10 years in, still forgetting rules and having to look things up, and it's just there's so much. So not just mastering the rules, but also how to interpret them or be flexible with them for players who are asking, can I do this? And making things happen for them in a way that is not game breaking, and also facilitating good player interaction and good vibes at the table, and giving people a voice. So there's and also role playing all the NPCs.
Yes.
And doing voices, can't guarantee they'll have the same accent every time, but
Which is fine.
Which is totally fine.
Yeah, I've definitely, there was a hot take on Twitter recently that was like, I don't think actual plays are really a good way for people to learn. And I'm like, I learned TTRPGs through watching actual plays. That is how I learned, to the point where I was playing a game and my GM was like, you only get sneak attack under these very, very specific things. And I'm like, okay. And then after watching actual plays, I'm like, no, this is when I get it. And he's like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah." You're right. Right? I wouldn't have gotten that myself just by reading the book because it's too much. I'm also going to backtrack just a moment because there have been some crimes done in chat and we have to acknowledge them. Rex says, I make no apologies for this. A two-tone tiefling barbarian that has been turned into a hat. A chapeau roan. And then Lurking Rider says, the most ridiculous character concept I've come up with that's probably not allowed in Raw. It would have to be homebrewed. Awakened Potato Artificer, ridiculously high passive perception. I mean, they can have multiple eyes.
Oh,
Don't ask how they managed to build anything, though.
I love these. Please play that campaign.
Yes.
So fun.
Oh no, the eyes took it.
The eyes took it.
The eyes.
So
the eyes.
I'm playing in Wheelrod's War on Friday. I was like, GM, will you please let me play my dream of playing? It was originally to be a druid, but I became ranger. Same idea. The druid stoner weed hookup who somehow gets roped into being part of the party. So yeah, that's my himbo ranger. It's just along for the ride. And he makes good berries. But yeah, APs can be incredibly useful, not just for learning the rules. I have long it's all chipped or fried. I have long said, Mimics and Misfits, thank you so much for the resubscribe. So appreciated. I've long said, I would rather someone sit down and watch an AP and see how the game is played around the table than come in knowing every rule in the book. Because I can teach you the rules while we're playing. But if you don't know how to behave at the table, if you're too afraid to speak up, or even worse, unwilling to let anyone else have their moment in the spotlight, I would rather you see how people behave around a table and then teach you the rules than you come in and going, actually, that rule of cool is against the rules. Yes, that's why we called it the rule of cool.
Well, and arguably actual plays have, and again, this is anecdotal and opinion, but I basically think it's true. They've changed the way people play TTRPGs because seeing other people do it in different ways just opens your mind to the possibilities of the types of characters you can play, how you can play them, the types of stories that you can tell. And I think it's centered the D&D community more around narrative and storytelling, and not that obviously rules are important, but like you said, you can learn the rules. I think the harder thing is like telling good stories collaboratively and in sync, and make, I think, yeah, like as a GM, making it fun and like as fun as possible, like really letting characters shine and have their moments and things like that. And there's an art to it, like and I don't really consider myself like much of an actor or anything, but I do think that my role playing has improved a lot by watching acting plays. So so all of that got me curious about how do people learn in actual plays, and specifically one of the theories that that's sort of guiding this research and I'm most interested in academically is social learning theory. And so that's, if you're interested, was originated by Albert Bandura in 1977, and essentially says that learning occurs through, not exclusively, but does occur through observation, imitation, and modeling, or essentially copying, watching and copying what other people do, but not always just carbon copy, interpreting it for different social situations or situations where you might apply that knowledge. And so when I was thinking about, because I knew I was like, okay, I want to do research in TTRPGs, and games like D&D, Savage Worlds, there's already built-in explanation of the rules, modeling of behavior, and role play, but also modeling of how to use the rules. It's sort of like already a microcosm for social learning, because you might have players at the table who have different levels of experience or knowledge, and part of being at the table is, it's supposed to be a collaborative game, and so people will learn from more experienced players, or even just learn, even if they're experienced, they may not have played a certain type of character, or seen every situations come up where you're like, I've never had to make a ruling on this, and so
what does happen
you
when
learn
you put a
from
bag
each
of holding
other
inside a bag of holding?
Yeah, right.
Ooh, I definitely sat down locked in about that. Ooh.
Oh,
because I knew my players would be like, huh? Immediately.
Yep. Well, I should add too on that note that the tiefling hat was also our bag of holding. That was
amazing. But yeah, Lurking Writer says there's so many different methods of learning, and people won't necessarily learn best via the same method.
That's absolutely true.
We actually had an incredible guest who ran a TTRPG camp for children, and they would go in and they would make a box fort to play in. So their first day was making the fort, and then they would get their minis, and it's very, very cute. But she had a really cool, because they were kids, and a lot of it was learning social interactions. So she's like, we have a rewind tool that you could use at any point. So you could say like, oh, I didn't realize that would hurt her feelings. I want to rewind that and change that. And I was like, that is such a cool tool for children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or anyone trying to learn empathy or social interaction. Because let's be fair, there's definitely been some moments where I'm like, even as an adult, I could learn a lot more about how to handle this.
Oh, yeah. You can
I still don't know what to say.
Learn more.
I also don't know what to say at a wedding.
Yeah, that's a tough one. There should be a role-playing game for that. honestly. But yeah, so that's sort of the guiding concept behind my research idea. And so sort of that like built-in, as you're doing things in a TTRPG, you're explaining what you're doing. So it's got that, like, we call it scaffolding, like I'm going through the steps of what I'm doing. And you're talking about, in some cases it's you're role playing, you're improving, but you're also like including that, like how do the rules govern what I'm doing here. And then actual plays are, other people can watch those and observe, and probably a lot of people do not watch actual plays primarily for learning, but that's kind of what's social learning and other forms of informal learning are. It's like it's just kind of incidental a lot of the time and unstructured, and you pick up what you pick up from that experience. And so it creates this sort of like microcosm for exploring, like, how do people learn socially by watching others do this thing that is actually like fairly complex and involves a lot of different skills.
Yeah, I work in video games, and so it started with, like, I heard the question a lot of, like, why do people even watch video game streams? Why do you watch someone play a stream? And I'm like, why do you watch someone play sports? Right? Because I can't perform at that level, or maybe I just appreciate because it's fun, because it's entertaining. And then then video game streams became accepted, and people like, well, why do people watch people play TTRPGs? And it's like, because I can't play with Brennan Lee Mulligan, but I still want to enjoy the stories of Brennan Lee Mulligan.
That's right.
That's great. I get entertained, and I get ideas, I get inspiration. David, you have the thing. Did it come back?
There are two things that APs taught me. One is that it taught me what I didn't like about certain styles of playing tabletop, because there is a subsection of people where they're like, I want to roll dice and bonk things. And I don't like running tables like that. And so APs showed me that, at least in a public performative space, most games aren't like that. And so running into that a lot in like a very small sphere is like, okay, this is an isolated thing. There are other avenues I can explore that are widely accepted. And the second thing is it allows me to experience different systems that I don't necessarily have the time or resources to do. Like, I'm very fortunate. At any point in time, I can say, hey, I want to run a game, and then I've got 5 people who want to play with me. The problem is, between Kay and my schedule, there's a solid 15 minutes at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday that is available. And so I like, despite my desire, like, I don't necessarily have the free time to do that. And it makes me think of all the people, including some of the people I know, who want to play the games, or are curious about it and want to learn more. Mimics Misfits says, listen, I have Wednesdays off, let's do it. Rex goes, so you're free.
Yep.
But like, I remember how isolated I felt from not just TTRPGs, but all the other different types of gaming that was happening. So like Magic the Gathering and Warhammer and like all these other tabletop things, because I was both far away from where those things were happening, relatively far away. Like in Los Angeles, it's 3 miles from where I was, my childhood home, to a game store, but also in LA, that could be 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the time of day. And I also, because I'm Black, felt there was this barrier that I felt when I walked into those stores where it's like everybody looks at me and is like, "Why are you here?" And I was like, "You know what? You're right. I shouldn't be here." There are some bars I walked into that are in the same way. But there are also people in, like, Nebraska who live 3 miles or 30 miles away from a grocery store, let alone a game store. And there's this isolation that you can mitigate or even bridge by being able to sit and watch these games. Just like with video games and Twitch, circling back to what Kay said of, why would you pay to, well, one, there are people who aren't good at certain types of games who still want to experience the story.
Mhm.
Like, if I'm interested in StarCraft or StarCraft 2 or anything I have to watch a stream. I can't sit and play those games with any sort of competence.
I took a week off of work to go watch go to my friend's house, sleep on his couch, and watch him play God of War. Because I'm like, I'm not playing this game, but I know this is going to be a good story.
And I know someone who watched over 100 hours of someone's stream playing Hades because they just didn't have the mechanical skill to go through that game. And then in addition to that, games are expensive. Like I'm very fortunate that I'm still able to play a bunch of different types of games, but not everybody has it like I do. And like if you're in Brazil or Australia where the games are even more expensive and the exchange rate is even worse, a lot of times the only way you can experience these games is by sitting and watching someone else play them. So there are a lot of advantages because, again, like Kay and I are very lucky in that we have access to tons and tons of systems. And, when we're not working on things, both Kay and I will go into the Rolodex of games we have available to us and flip through and check them out and be like, oh, this is cool. But not everybody has 30 tabletop games, available to them, like PDFs and books, just like laying around. Some people look at the price of the PHP and they're like, well, I'll get that maybe next month. And so, it's definitely a way to get into it.
Yeah, it's made it much more accessible for everyone, I think.
Absolutely.
And also you're able to, like I said, not just see different styles of play, different table dynamics, but also see different people represented in the gaming community. Like it's given, like, I mean, like literal faces to the games that we never used to see. And I think that's made an incredible difference too in drawing more people into playing TTRPGs and or like you said, just watching and enjoying it. I mean, that's kind of an interesting perspective that is not really pertaining to learning in my research, but I'm still interested in knowing more about, is like people who don't play TTRPGs at all, but just enjoy APs as a form of entertainment. And that's like, it's just so fascinating. Like watching that Mercer for some people is like watching an NBA game or something.
Yeah, one of Cake Teas doesn't play, like, would like to play more TTRPGs, but time. And is like, and half the time, like, she does listen to a bunch of APs, but then also she's just like, just tell me what happened in your game. What's happening in Emergency Power? What is Soul up to? Just I don't even have time to listen to the episode. Just give me the Cliffs Notes. I want to know the story. And that's Alicia, one of my other friends, she's played one TTRPG. David ran she and I through a one shot kind of to introduce, and she's like, that was cool. I enjoyed it. I don't think I could set aside 3 hours a week to do this. Like, it's just not in my wheelhouse or my attention span. I'm glad I did it. No tea, no shade. Doesn't watch APs, but we get on the phone call and she's like, okay, so what's up? What's happening with Burton? What's going on with these characters? Like, she's like, I am invested in this story. Tell me what's going on. And it's not even watching an AP. It's all secondhand.
That's awesome. Yeah. like I love, I'm in the same boat. Like I just don't have a lot of time to watch them, but I do love to read recaps and then go to the episode and like find that part and be like, what happened here? Just sort of like the highlight reels that are most interesting to me. Get the story from a summary, but then I can see it in action and what happened mechanically and role play wise there.
Yeah. Rex says it's so nice to watch entertainment that is made by people, not necessarily a TV show or a movie, that is effectively at an emotional remove by the nature of the production. And then Lurking Writer says, I love TTRPG and lament that my mortal life is too short to experience all of them personally and all of the APs too. Laria Stormforge says, I do not have the patience or care to deal with certain playstyles in games like RTS. I want all the management stuff to go away and just give me a story, please. So I will watch someone else play those crunchy games for hours on end, share the joy, and get my bits of the story. There's also been an interesting... so, as some of y'all know, wrestling is having a big resurgence. Like, wrestling is coming back into the popular mindset. And some people were like, what is this? Why is this? What's going on here? And one of the things that was pointed out is we've had a death of long form content. The long form content that we get is now the Avengers movies that all somehow tie together, even though they really don't, and it's not the most cohesive story, because no one is renewing TV shows for seasons and seasons and seasons. So, we get one season of Almost Human, which was one of the best shows ever made. I will go to my grave with that. We get a couple seasons of a show and then it gets canceled. And people are craving long form content. They're craving the ability to follow characters, to see this growth, to see this change, not over a couple hours, but over months and years, and to follow these characters. And so I blame some of the resurgence in the popularity of TTRPGs and wrestling on just that need for long form content that the companies are not giving us anymore, because if it's not this level of rating, gotta kill it.
Right. But if people just want to make an AP because they like hanging out once or twice a week and enjoy telling stories together and playing games, and it's actually like a really it's a fascinating medium that's really not like in anything else.
And
like
I'm going to reference Critical Role Campaign 2 here, y'all. And I'm going to mention
we've never spoken about Critical Role at any point
ever
on this show. In fact, what is a Critical Role? Why is it critical? What role are they playing? Anyway, continue.
Who is this Athu Urser? I am going to reference a thing that happens in episodes like 25, 26, 27. If you have not watched Campaign 2 and do not want spoilers and have somehow avoided it to this point, please run away for the moment, right? But I was binging Critical Role during the height of the pandemic to just keep my sanity, right? I was like, I cannot be at a table playing with my friends, so I can at least watch friends at a table playing with friends. And I'm gonna be honest, Critical Role first campaign, current campaign, really, I've just fallen completely off. But Campaign 2 was the thing I needed at the right time. It's like the Final Fantasy game that came out of the height of your teenage angst is your favorite Final Fantasy, right? That is just the way that works. It's not wrong, David. Think you could start talking to anyone. The only exception is like if someone's like, I couldn't afford the newest console, so I played this game I played the newest game that I could on my console at the height of my teenage angst, and that's my favorite. But so again, spoilers for Campaign 2 of Critical Role. If you somehow haven't been spoiled yet, I don't know how. It was the height of the pandemic. I was hanging on like everyone else by a thread, right, to everything, and watching this show to escape. Jennifer, I'm not running for you, am I, Jen?
No. Okay. I'm good. I've gotten that far.
And then my favorite character Molly Mock dies. And it's not a major plot point. It's not a heroic sacrifice. It's not, hey, Minyalama. It's not when it doesn't happen at a point where it concludes a story, it just happened. And that is part of the power of actual plays, of group storytelling, of some of this being up to chance, is like, this character's story had only just begun. We were only just getting to know this character, and now they're gone, and there's not a good reason for it. The reason for it is a bunch of different circumstances came together to make this terrible. And in the most messed up way, that was exactly what I needed in my life to like deal with what was happening with the world around me. It was like, okay, I am doing this to escape, but also now I just have to go, like, sometimes life is random and hard, and there's not a reason for it, and we just have to deal with that. And when we talk about learning through TTRPGs, like, there are so many different ways to learn. And that, like, that story has, like, that moment has stuck with me, because, and I was watching it after, so I was binging these. It was one after the other. I was messed up for a month. A month later, I was still crying about the death of a fictional character. And I'm not talking, I could watch one episode a week. I powered through all those episodes and was still crying a month later. And it was like, no, this is what I need. This is me learning, like, how to deal with the world, the state the world is in, without dealing with the world itself. In a very weird way, and it was so powerful.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's emotional learning, like social emotional learning how to handle your feelings and events that are out of your control. I think that's one of the most important life skills you could possibly acquire, and how cool that you can get that from stories. Right?
And learning that failure doesn't mean the end.
That's right. Right. Yes. Yeah, and there's something, I think, in something like an actual play where people are creating the story together. Now, of course, if they're allowing for character deaths in their game, then the rules will sometimes just dictate if someone lives or dies. It's not, it's not like there's people in the writer's room deciding how they're going to write this character off. Like, it just happens. Like, things just happen in life. And that's, I surmise that's what made it feel like more real or closer to a real life experience, even if it was vicarious. Vicarious learning. That's part of what we're talking about. Totally relevant to vicarious learning, social learning, observational learning, and a lot of the things that so far in my research I've seen people express is now we haven't gotten really that deep, but I kind of want to go do more, in the future, talk more about that. That's really interesting perspective on, like what do you learn about life from watching actual plays, and what skills that are sort of those I don't know if it's skill, but also wisdom, soothsaying stuff, that you don't always get in the classroom, right? So, and that's why I wanted to ask people in the interviews, because this was qualitative studies, so I did interviews. And by the way, I am actually still recruiting participants.
Yes, we have dropped the link a couple times, but
sweet. So yeah, I'm specifically looking for folks who have experience with Savage Worlds, because it just helps to, even though in the interviews people didn't exclusively talk about Savage Worlds actual plays, but I'm looking at like the cultural context of the discourse and how people talk about games, based on coming from that same essentially community of practice. So using a lot of the same language, like everyone did talk about Savage Worlds actual plays some, and I think too, like different games, like I mentioned, like the style of Savage Worlds that brings in a different perspective, than someone who's only played D&D. Not that that is bad, but it's just different.
Hey, just a moment. Calamity, thank you so much for the raid and for bringing over your community. Raid from the Crypt. Hello, everyone. I am Kay. This is, I think, this side. This is David. We are two parts of Chaotic Wholesome. This is the Table Talk show where we talk all things TTRPGs, from indies to intersectionality. And we are here with Jenn, who is a academic and does research and studies around TTRPGs. So telling us about her study into learning and social through Savage Worlds, and we will drop the link again. She is actively seeking participants if you want to do cool TTRPG things for educational purposes.
That
For
would be
research.
so much appreciated. And I only need 1 to 2 hours of your time for a brief Zoom interview, and we can do camera or no camera, either way. But yeah, just so you can talk to more folks about not just the learning aspect. Definitely that's ultimately what I want to dig into, but I also am interested in just what are viewers' reasons for watching actual plays in general, because sort of my ultimate like values that I have about education is that it should be enjoyable, that ideally people will you don't have to love every subject or every learning experience, and you don't have to be a total education nerd like me, but I think having the sort of like developing a learner identity and being able to seek out learning experience, wanting to seek out learning experiences throughout your entire lifetime, I think is very important. And I think making learning experiences more engaging, interactive, immersive, and more relevant, especially like one another area I'm interested in is identity and learning. So how does one's positionality, where they come from in life, impacts their learning experiences, what learning experiences they seek out, how learning experiences that are they're sort of like compelled to participate in, what is that like for different people, and how can we make learning experiences optimal for everybody. So so that's what I'm looking at. And then the other third part of my research that I'm still sort of like just starting into in this particular study is any of the actual plays that are mentioned by participants in their interviews. I'm going and looking at those and sort of analyzing them for social learning. So what are sort of like the things that the stars of the show are saying, doing, presenting that contribute, that would be considered contributing to a social learning experience. So yeah, so please, if you're interested, even if you think you might be interested, please fill out the little screener. It's pretty short, should take less than 10 minutes, and yeah, I'd love to about that.
Yeah, David and I have talked a lot about, we talk a lot about intersectionality, and yes, Jason, who is Candace's nesting partner, just showed up and was like, "I love Savage Worlds. It's my favorite system."
Yes.
We are teaching Jason D&D, so we are getting to play our first full campaign with him, and it is a treat to get to have them at our home game. But Dave and I spend a lot of time talking about intersectionality and identities, and we have a running joke on the channel that is less of a joke and just more of a fact that it's like there's the two ways that people figure out their pronouns, their new names, if they're trans, if they're non-binary, is TTRPGs and Stardew Valley. that is the gateway.
Yeah. Well, it's so I have heard similar things from friends who are like, I played D&D in high school and it helped me realize I'm gay, like things like that are not uncommon. But also, smaller on a smaller scale, things like that happen in TTRPGs all the time, discovering stuff about yourself, even if on a subconscious level. And one of the most fascinating things about like the psychology of playing games to me is this idea of you have three identities when you are role playing or role taking in a gaming experience. And it doesn't have to be TTRPG where you're like fully immersed. It can be something like, playing Elden Ring, but you're like in that, taking a role of some kind. But you've got your real life identity, and then you have your in-game identity, your fictional identity. And then there's this thing called the what is that called? It's like the merging of the two, essentially, where it's actually, there's research showing that people have an experience when they're role playing or role taking that they sort of like feel like they've taken on some of the qualities of the character that they're playing. That's called projective identity. And that can be something that is short-lived, or it could be long-lasting, like realizing something about yourself. But also, like, one good example is there's a study where people played a VR game where they were a cow, and they were just a cow being a cow. So they were just like walking around, chewing cud, hanging out with other cows. And then the majority of participants did not want to eat cow for like several weeks after the study, who were normally cow eaters. And so they sort of developed a, sort of mirror empathy for the experience of being a cow that made them like, be like, I don't want to. It was like cannibalism.
Yeah. There's a question for you from chat that we just put in the Zoom chat, and I don't want to read the whole thing out, but if you want to peek in chat and you could tell us if those dates are correct.
Oh yeah, no, sorry about that. That was like real idealism there when I thought I would be done, wrapped up the interviews at that point. But I was actually working ahead, so I'm still on track to finish on time because this is something I have to do. It's like basically like pre-work for my dissertation, so like a little shorter project that will develop into longer projects. So that's just whenever you're available in the next few months.
Perfect.
So good question.
There's a lot of discourse, and I'm going to approach this carefully, because there are definitely bad versions of this, but there's a lot of discourse in the community about bleed, and a lot of people like bleed is a very bad thing. Bleed is, and I'm like, I kind of live for a certain amount of bleed. Like if something happens to my character and I don't feel it,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I really committed to the game. Now, you know, if something happens and I cry, you know, if something bad happens to my character and I end up crying, like if my character dies and I don't cry, I wasn't playing that game right, in my opinion, right? But I also have to be aware that, you know, hey, this person's character was a jerk to my character, and if I think now that person's a jerk, even though I know they're not, you know, that is an unhealthy bleed. But and again, I came up from, I wasn't a theater kid because I wasn't allowed to be a theater kid because the theater teacher hated me. But I studied acting and I studied all this stuff as much as I could because it meant so much to me. And it's very difficult to be an artist, be it an actor, be it a singer, any kind of performer, without having the type of empathy where it's like, I don't have this exact experience, but I understand that feeling and I can project my understanding of that feeling onto the situation to be able to draw upon emotions to depict it correctly.
Yep.
And I feel like there is a healthy version of bleed that a lot of people should do that more, just to get in touch with their feels.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, let's be honest, guys, men who just really should feel something more than they do.
Well, and I think, and in a game, like, whether you're watching an actual play or it's your own character, there's something about it that, you know, I'd like to capture more concretely, so we can infuse it into other learning experiences, but like that just feels so like real and relevant because it's happening to you in a way, even though it's your character, right? And I think that relevance and like, what does this have to do with me and my life is something that many kids in school question or are not getting enough of to motivate them. And so I think that even though it's like artificial in a way, it's like also still real. And so that's why it's like projective, right? Like you're experiencing it like almost like secondhand through character, but also firsthand because you are being the character. So it's just such a like interesting
a perspective on that I think isn't talked about enough is, you know, what is real versus what isn't is part of what is real is what we agree upon.
Yes.
Because like justice, mercy are human contrivances. Like without humans, those things don't exist. So like, are they real? Of course they're real because we decide they are real. And like, you know, we talk a lot about like the parasocial effect. And very famously, a lot of soap opera stars that have played villains on soap operas have had to get security details because 65-year-old women come up to them with canes and they're like, what you did to her was unforgivable, and then try to hit them with the cane. It's like, but so on the one hand, you could be like, man, maybe they should, but on the other hand, it's a testament to both how good the writing is and how good the performance is when someone is so energized and incensed by your performance that they will come seek you out. It's the same thing with the kid who played the little asshole in Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, Joffrey.
Oh yep.
He had to quit acting. He's like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Right.
David, who
he was too good.
Tiny Tina's voice actress.
Oh, Ashley Burke.
Ashley Burke. I was like Ashley, and I couldn't get past Johnson because Ashley Johnson. A lot of the Critical Role fandom blames Ashley Burke for the death of Molly Mock. I already spoiler alert at this, and like
Birch, yeah, not Burke. Birch.
Birch, yes, and she was like afraid to go. Like she was public enemy number one, according to the fandom, for quite a while. Even though like she didn't decisions she made resulted in her character made resulted in this, right? But it wasn't like they went out and stabbed Molly, but like to the point where there's hilarious every so often they'll share like there was a text that was going around of they texted Molly Mock's player Taliesin texted Taliesin and was like, I'm on the bus to Comic-Con and there's a Molly Mock cosplayer beside me. What do I do? And it's like, it really, like, we decide these things are real and we decide these things are important. And it kind of, this is my level, this is how deep I go into like nerd stuff. My Starfinder character went from being like the balanced, which is, they play not a paladin, they play a Solarian, which is 2 parts light and dark, and you align to light or dark to photon graviton back and forth, and you kind of trade it out and you get different perks. But a thing happened where they went broken cycle and they lost access to the graviton, and they could only be photons. They could only be star, and they were all constellation, stars, suns, and moons shit. It's all their motif. And it came with this big moment of clarity for them. Spoiler alert for the podcast, too. But like when it was like, okay, well now they are this thing. They have lost this other side. How is their motif going to change? How is their, and I went with constellations because it's like, okay, yes, it's stars, but all these suns and stars, and there are invisible connections that aren't real. But they're real for the people who know what they are. They're real for people who can see the shape, and they matter to those people. And that's like the relationships that they had kind of been avoiding and running from, is like, I tried to pretend like these weren't real and they didn't matter. But these spider silk connections are so strong, and they're the only thing that's gotten me through all of this.
Yeah.
And it's really fun to start playing with like, okay, what does this mean? How do you symbolize this in your character? And how do you physically show character growth? How do you change their motif? How do you change their outfit, their look based on these character growth moments? It's so much fun.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it is interesting, like, you know, in talking about like what's real and what's not, and like there being, you know, what is reality even, right? Like we create reality together, but people have can have very different experiences of reality. And I think you know,
we can't even agree with the topics are of the debate. What are the real issues that matter for this election cycle? We can't agree. There's two different Americas right now.
There's too much.
It's wild.
Yeah. But yeah, like I think playing these games, like, kids should just be introduced to TTRPGs as young as possible age, because and the appropriate, you know, game for their age, because the perspective taking aspect of it is like just really, I think, for me, you know, even though I was 30 when I started playing, and even though it's like fictional characters, it just changes something in your brain, you know, being someone else, that for me has carried over into real life. Just openness, I think. It builds openness. You know, it's like they've made connections and research between people's like psychedelic experiences. I just went to the Serious Games conference in Toronto last month, and there's a presentation on this topic about sort of like the story arc of a psychedelic experience. Like if you take LSD or if you take mushrooms, you know, you go on this journey, and it's that narrative and the sort of experience of being yourself, but being also just kind of being someone else, because you're like, you know, not, you're in a different space of your mind, and the, you know, people or beings that you meet on this journey change perspective, and that's what is so therapeutic about it.
Absolutely.
It's I forget what all of the, sort of like different, there's this personality model. It includes things like, the different aspects of personality. One is like extroversion, but I forget what all the others are. But the main one that is most malleable is openness to having different experiences, understanding other people's experiences. And I think, the storytelling aspects of TTRPGs can be really strong for that.
I had a moment. I joined this one game and I knew I was bringing in a character who was kind of like the tribute to the people, because I grew up in small town America, right? And it was like, this is kind of my tribute to who a lot of these people could have been had they met someone who wasn't exactly like them, at a young, at a point in their life, right? So, kind of the good old boy, but the ideal version of the good old boy, right? And I was like, it's fun because there are a lot of really good people who are small-minded and ignorant and racist and sexist and other things. And I don't want to say it's not their fault, but it certainly, environment could have made it a lot easier, a lot less for them, right? Like,
Right.
And I was joining a new game. I didn't know anyone at the table. I didn't know the GM. I didn't really know the system. So I was like, I'm built a backstory. And I didn't go super deep into it, right? Because you don't know how responsive is the GM, what kind of game is this going to be. And then as we got into it, like, it was like, okay, no, we are getting into this. So I started fleshing out the backstory a little more and, working with the GM to make sure it was all cool. And then, like, at one point, I had a moment of like, there is so much of my own self and my own backstory in this character in obviously modified ways, but like so much of the same themes that I just realized that I gave my character's mother had the same first name as my mother, just with a different spelling, and it hadn't occurred to me until I said it out loud, and I went,
Wow.
oh no, we have to change some of this. Oh no. We unconsciously went too deep
real.
here. Nope, rewind. And it really is amazing how it's like a lot of these things I would never talk about to people I don't know well. I certainly wouldn't put them out on the internet, right? But through this character, oopsie poopsie.
Yeah. That one slipped. Oops. Yeah, I think you bring up a good point about the, talking about people, going after actors who, and like, that's like, I think, a emotional intelligence thing, to be able to separate, what happened in something fictional with the person you saw doing that in the fictional show. I don't know if you've watched Chaos yet on Netflix, and I will not say anything specific, but I had to seek emotional support from other viewers on the subreddit, after one of my favorite actors ever did something unspeakable on screen that I hated. And it was just like a moment of that, but like, how could you do it? But yeah, but then I was like, okay, yeah, I was like, not real, but it still felt not good. And there's some things that you can't just learn from playing a game or watching a game. Like, you have to, like, I think a lot of many APs model good table behavior, some better than others, some more inclusive tables than others, but you can watch that and kind of try and model that, but having like a cognitive and contextual understanding of how to process emotions at the table, how some of that is learned through experience, but also sort of like reading, intellectual discussion and absorbing material that sort of explains these things. I mean, I'm biased because I love psychology, but
Yes.
just you to be able to understand at actual intellectual level what is happening inside your own brain. I think that is not necessarily going to be learned at the table, but so I think, and that's the same for like a classroom. If you're using a TTRPG or narrative or AP model of some kind to teach material in your course, you're also going to have things that they're reading and watching and discussing outside of that. So, and I think that's to your point too, where it's like you can learn a game from watching an AP. I think you talked about this in the beginning, Kate, but like it's still, you're still going to need some rules explanation. You're still going to need to read the rules.
Yes.
Maybe not the whole player's handbook, but you're
Gotta
still
look
going to
things
need
up.
to look it up and be like, how does this work?
Even Matt Mercer has to look up the rules on occasion.
Right.
Yeah, which is so like just
and to piggyback onto, because this is important and we're going to say it every chance we get because it is very important. There are things that you cannot learn through TTRPGs, and playing a minority does not replace having lived experiences as a minority, having a table of all men, but some of them are playing women, having an all-white table, but some of them are playing people of color, is not the same as having that there. And I have had some very profound experiences in TTRPGs, largely through David, who has been kind enough to educate me in character, where I'm like, oh, this is that light bulb moment of how people are often treated that I, as a white person, don't get to experience, right? And that was through fantasy. That does not replace a true lived experience. I still am white at the end of the day. I will never not be white. Playing an orc does not give me the experience of being a person of color or any kind of minority. So we're going to shout that out, because yes, it can be a great tool for understanding. It can be a great tool for empathy. It doesn't replace the actual lived experience. It does not make you an expert.
Really not. And that's the thing. It's the role-playing different characters can build the skill or the mental capacity for openness, but it's not actual experience.
Right. And we are nearing the end of our time together. So thank you all so much. Lurking Writer says, learn from the mistakes of others. You can't possibly live long enough to make them all yourself, after all. And Rex says, Jeremy Crawford, who wrote the rules, checks the books when they have a question, so I feel no shame on checking the rules when I need to. So yes, in real life and in TTRPGs, check the rules occasionally. Look stuff up. Learn a thing, open a book. It's good for you. Chat, if you have any final questions for Jen, now is the time to shout it out. Jen, do you have any final thoughts or things you would like to share as we wrap up for the evening?
I just want to say, keep learning, keep exploring what is interesting to you. And, the great thing about when you reach adulthood is that you can decide what that is. And I just happen to be a huge learning nerd and might just be in school forever. But really, where my interests are gravitating is actually more informal learning, just learning in the wild. And I think so much of that happens all the time. So keep exploring, keep adventuring in real life and at the table.
Yes, I did not get along with the educational system. Any level, I hate structured learning. But that's because I'm an autodidact, and only other autodidacts know that word, because we teach it to ourselves. And I love learning. I just hate being told you have to go learn this thing, and it's a problem. Fortunately, we live in the era of the internet, so I can learn a lot. Rex says, thank you for coming on the show. It has been great to hear what you are up to. And Lurking Writer says, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, Jen. Best of luck with the study. As I said earlier, I look forward to learning what comes out of that. And earlier, Jason said, I just saw who you had on. Jenn is awesome. So thank you again for sharing your time with us. I believe David is going to drop the links into chat one more time for how you can check
Absolutely.
out his projects and be part of the research study and all sorts of awesome stuff. Thank you again for sharing. Thank you, as always, chat, for hanging out. You make this wonderful experience every time. We adore you. And the pun crimes tonight were wonderful and terrible, and I appreciate them so very much. David, who the heck is you? And what the heck is we doing here?
I was supposed to come up with something witty to say, but didn't. But I'm David, and this is the Chaotic Wholesome Tuesday Table Talk Show, where every week we talk about TTRPG stuff, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to be a better person, often featuring awesome people doing awesome things, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusivity so that everybody can have a good time.
Lurking Rider with the callback. We mashed it today. So proud of you, Lurking Rider. And yes, I am Kay. I'm the other half of Cataclysm Presents. Find us not Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, and we do this here every Tuesday. And next week, who do we have next week? We have a guest next week. Who do we have next week? Next week we are here with Hector. I am very excited for Hector to come and talk about this project. Hookup from Candace the Magnificent. Very excited. Find us Thursday playing Baldur's Gate 3. We maybe have 2 more streams of that, and then that's over. Friday, I'm over on Entropy Emporium playing the Weird Wilds War. And then Saturday, we're here doing Unlikely Heroes from 2 to 5. You will not want to miss this party. They are chaotic and wonderful and meshing in the best way. There's a ton of other stuff I'm doing, but I can't talk about them yet because they're not out, and that sucks. But when David says I'm really busy, trust me, I'm really busy, and all the stuff's I'm sure going to hit at once, and it's going to be terrible and wonderful. Thank you all. We hope to see you Thursday, if not Thursday, Friday, if not Friday, Saturday, and if not Saturday, back here next week.
Nah, you're going to be here Saturday. Every last one of you going to be here Saturday.
Or else David's going to have words with you.
Right.
Thank you all so much. Who are we rating, David?
We are rating Sweet Rosie B.
My dear friend Sweet Rosie B is streaming Dungeons & Dragons. We're going to go see them. And thank you all. Be kind to yourself, be excellent to others, and we will see you next time.